Hi. Let's think about sine, cosine, and tangent of angles 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180, and 270. So they are exactly the angles that divide our quadrants. First of all, we are going to think about any angle. For example, this angle alpha. Remember that we can draw this right triangle. And we are going to work in the unit circle, whose radius equals 1, because it is easiest. To calculate the sine of this angle, we would have to divide opposite side, which is this, over hypotenuse. In this case, hypotenuse equals 1. So the length of this side of the triangle will be sine of the angle. And then to calculate cosine, it would be adjacent side over hypotenuse, that is 1. So the length of this side is exactly the cosine of the angle. So if we think of the point where my angle intersects the circle, which is this, we can say that cosine equals y coordinate of this point, if this was my x-axis and this my y-axis. Remember, the coordinates of a point are y, how much I go for upwards or downwards. Remember that upwards is positive and downwards is negative. And cosine of alpha, for the same reason, would be the x-coordinate of this point where my angle intersects the circle. So now we are going to think like this, but with the angles we said before. So for example, with 0 degrees, that it would be as well 360 degrees, where my angle intersects the circle is here, this point, and the coordinates are, for x we have 1 because the radius of this circle equals 1, and for y I don't have to move upwards or downwards, so it would be 0. So that sine of 0 would be y coordinate, which is 0, and cosine of 0 would be 1. Now let's work with 90 degrees. We don't have to memorize this, by the way, I have to say, because we just have to think of the coordinates. Now, the point where my angle intersects the circle is here. So the coordinates are, for x, no movement to the right, no movement to the left, 0. And for y, it would be 1, which is the radius of the circle. It is the distance from the origin. So sine of 90 will be the y coordinate, which is 1, y coordinate, remember, and cosine of 90 would be 0. Let's work now with 180. The coordinates of this point are, for x, 1 unit to the left. For y, no movement to the upwards or downwards, so 0. So sine of 180 would be 0, and cosine of 180 would be -1, negative. You have to think of the signs as well. And lastly, we have 270. The coordinates of this point where the angle intersects the circle are 0 for x and -1 for y. So sine of 270 would be -1, and cosine of 270 would be 0. Now, if we want to calculate the tangent, you know that tangent equals sine over cosine. So sine over cosine will be 0 over 1, which is 0. Tangent of 90 would be 1 over 0. This quotient doesn't have a result in the set of real numbers. But if we divide a number by a number close to 0, we can see that it tends to infinite. So the result would be infinity. Look, let's remember, if we divide 1 by 0.1, the result is 10. If we divide 1 by 0.01, which is closer to 0, we are trying to approach to 0, it would be 100. So if we divide by this, many zeros, and then 1, this will be much closer. The result would be with many zeros. So it gets closer to infinity. That's why this is the result. Then we would have tangent of 180, 0 over minus 1, which is 0. 0 has no sign, remember. And tangent of 270, it would be minus 1 over 0. And for the same reason, this would tend to infinity. Or even positive infinity, depends if we approach to 0 by the left or by the right, which is difficult for you because we haven't studied that, so forget about it so far. And now just tell you, I hope you understood, and remember that we could have worked in radians. This would be 2 pi radians, this would be pi halves, this would be pi, and this would be 3 pi over 2. See you soon!